On today's show, how soon could Nae'Qwan Tomlin be on a standard contract? Plus, the latest on LeBron James, and should the Cavs have gone after Bradley Beal? We'll talk about all that and so much more on this mailbag edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92 Through the Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. Thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA, that is LOCKEDON NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. As you can see, if you are watching on YouTube, I am no longer at Summer League. I have made it back to Cleveland, Ohio. I am a little jet lagged. It is 8 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday night as I record this right now. I have no idea what time it actually feels like, but as I look at my computer screen and see the clock, that's what it says, even though it might feel something like 5 o'clock, because that's the time zone I've been living in for the last week. But Vegas was certainly a very good experience. I'm glad I went. I got a lot out of the trip, and it was good to see the Cavs play Summer League games. It was good to see a glimpse of, some guys that could be part of the future of this team. And that's where I wanted to start today's show with just a little bit, because there is one more Summer League game that'll take place this weekend. And as of right now, unless the schedule has come out since I started talking 2 minutes ago, the Cavs' final Summer League game, I do not yet believe has been set. Now, it'll be on Saturday. It'll be against another team that is not in the playoffs, but the Cavs are not in contention to win the Summer League championship. So they'll have one more game, and we will talk next week about what things look like in that game, if we learn anything new, just stuff along those lines. But one of the biggest conversations around this Cavs Summer League team has been around Nae'Qwan Tomlin, because he has had a very, very impressive, I think it's fair to say, Summer League showing for the Cavs so far. Now, Tomlin's story, of course, is a very interesting one, because he is somebody that did not start playing basketball until after high school, which is not something that is very common whatsoever for guys that are in the NBA or even in the G League. Like, I cannot imagine that there are more than 5 guys, if there are even that many, that didn't play high school basketball that are playing in the NBA or in the G League. So when I put the ask for questions out for this mailbag episode, one of the first ones that came from Bill. And Bill writes, do you think the Cavs will convert Tomlin from his two-way to an NBA contract like they did with Craig Porter Jr.? I do think at some point that will happen. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do think at some point Nae'Qwan Tomlin's going to be on a standard NBA contract with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I do think that he has shown enough, both last year and being elevated from somebody that was just on the G League roster with the Cleveland Charge to then earning a 2-year, 2-way deal. So he was on that 2-way contract last year. And of course, as of right now, is on that 2-way contract again. And there is the Cavs at any time, I believe, can put him on a new contract. Now, they can't spend a ton of money on him. They would not spend a ton of money on him. But if you look at the types of deals that they could do, go back and look at what Craig Porter Jr.'s contract was like, where it was a 4-year contract. And Craig's case is a little interesting because there was, I think, more of a need for him at that time with some of the stuff going on with the Cavs. Like, the Cavs just needed Craig Porter Jr. to play a role as an undrafted rookie. And obviously right now, Nae'Qwan Tomlin is somebody that is not necessarily needed. Like, he is potentially needed after this season. But I think if you look at the Cavs rotation right now, if you look at the way the Cavs are built right now, they're not counting on Nae'Qwan Tomlin to come in and provide a big impact this year. Now, if he can do that, that obviously makes them better. And if he can do that next year and the year after that, and maybe the year after that, and be a rotation player, that is something that I do think would be really, really good for the future of the Cavs. So the interesting thing about Craig Porter Jr. too, and one of the biggest differences here is because, well, one, both of those guys were longtime college players, right? Like CPJ went to school for, I believe, all 4 years, if not 5 because of the COVID year. I don't remember. Nae'Qwan Tomlin was a 4-year guy in college at multiple different schools, but he had 4 years of collegiate experience. The difference was, and CPJ is not a finished product yet, but he was much closer to being a finished product than what Nae'Qwan Tomlin still is at this point because of all the seasoning he had, the fact that he grew up playing basketball in a way that just Nae'Qwan Tomlin didn't. Like, that is what makes this so unique. So Craig Porter Jr., while he was on a 2-way contract, and the Cavs, I believe, signed him to that deal on draft night after he went undrafted, he never actually played in the G League until he signed a standard contract. While he was on his 2-way deal, he only played in NBA games, which is certainly something that is a rarity. And the Cavs actually have 2 guys that were on 2-way contracts and never played in the G League while on those 2-way contracts, because Dean Wade was the same thing, although that was a little different because of the pandemic and just that entire situation changed things. But I do look at this and say, okay, well, let's look at the contract that Craig Porter Jr. got, where it's a 4-year deal. The first 2 years are guaranteed. And then after that, it's non-guaranteed team option type writing. Like, that is going to be the language that would be in, I assume, any Nae'Qwan Tomlin contract extension. Now, because he's on a 2-way, the Cavs can sign him to that sort of deal at any time. It's not as if they need to do it by a certain date, because there are some guys that you look at and say, well, they're contract extension eligible until this date. Nae'Qwan, I do believe, could sign a standard contract with the Cavs at any time. Now, if he does sign a standard contract, I imagine it would be one that, while I do believe it will happen at some point this year. I don't know if it's going to happen before the season, but I do think at some point this year, it makes sense for the Cavs to lock Nae'Qwan Tomlin. And if he continues along this trajectory, the way that we've seen, and of course he has one more Summer League game to go, and we're not going to overreact to Summer League things, but it's not just Summer League that he's been good in. He was good in the G League last year too. But I think that you look at it and say, okay, well, this contract would probably be a 4-year deal. And the first year would be this upcoming season. It won't be, I would imagine, it won't be the full season, because I don't know that it's going to get signed. Or if, both sides want it to be something that is done before this season starts. So it'll be this year. I would imagine next year is guaranteed as well. And then after that, I would imagine there would be team options to where the Cavs could say, if they like what's going on, they can pick it up. Maybe there is a buyout there if they don't. A smaller buyout, but something along those lines. So maybe that is what this contract looks like. I would imagine that is what it looks like. Now, the other thing with this is these contracts, and Nae'Qwan, because he's undrafted, because he's not necessarily, because he was not some highly regarded prospect, maybe it's more likely that he does sign this to get the guaranteed payday for, 2 years on a standard deal. But these contracts can be difficult at times to get agents to agree to, because you're locking, like Nae'Qwan Tomlin in this case would be locked into essentially playing on the minimum for 4 years in the NBA. And maybe that is the best thing for him, but it's also a thing where I do sense that there's some pushback, and I don't know, Nae'Qwan's representation. I don't know how that would go. But I don't know that that's a contract that agents love to have their guys sign. So that is one thing that I would keep in mind. And of course, we will have, I believe, one more opportunity. I don't know why Nae'Qwan Tomlin would not play in the Cavs' final Summer League game this weekend, but he's been very, very good for the Cavs. And the first game he played, I think, was the best one. But in the 4 games that he's played, he's averaging 20.3 points per game on 58.2% shooting, 41% from 3, while also averaging 8.5 rebounds, just under 4 assists, almost 2 steals and a block. He has been, I think, one of the best players in Summer League. And when you can say that about a guy that is on a 2-way contract, that was undrafted, that didn't start playing basketball until 5 years ago, really, that is, I think, a very bright thing for the future. Because the best case scenario with Nae'Qwan Tomlin, and I don't know if this is going to happen, I don't know that it's not going to happen, we have no idea, no way of knowing this right now, but if he becomes somebody that a year from now, or I guess, 16 months from now, because of where we're at in the calendar, if he becomes a rotational player, it's a home run. It is absolutely, without question, a grand slam home run, because finding guys that are cheap labor, essentially, is the way that you have to look at it, is an incredibly difficult thing to do in the NBA. The Cavs have done it a few times. When you look at Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, Craig Porter Jr., they need to do it again with potentially one of Nae'Qwan Tomlin or Tyrese Proctor or Jalen Tyson. It's something I've been talking about all week. But what we have seen so far from Nae'Qwan Tomlin, I do think gives reason to think, okay, this could be something that works out in the Cavs' favor sooner than later. So to get back to the question, will Nae'Qwan Tomlin be on a standard contract with the Cavs this year? I believe so. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do think if he continues to show the things that he has shown so far and grow at the same rate or even a rate close to it, because at a certain point it becomes hard to grow at that same rate just because, you become too good to do it. If he continues along this path, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Cavs to try and lock him in and hope that he can be part of the future for them. Now, how much does Darius Garland impact the future? We haven't talked a ton about what DG can do for this team, so we're going to do that next. Plus, should DeAndre Hunter be in the starting lineup this year? That question was asked, and I will give an answer. That is straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, which can be a gigantic hassle. I mean, nobody these days wants to try and buy concert tickets as soon as they go on sale because it is a pain. And it is a pain because you're going to do that and you're going to lose your spot for the show that you've been dying to see. Well, live music, I think, should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That is a memory. It's a bad one, right? We all have those memories of trying to buy tickets to a concert, and ultimately we think back to that experience maybe a little bit more than we do the concert. But live music should be about those memories and not dealing with the stress of trying to buy the tickets. And that's where Game Time comes in, because Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. I love a good last minute deal. And the concert that I am looking to go to isn't until October. So I can't sit here and talk about, oh yeah, there's a concert I really want to go to in the very near future, because that's not the case. But T-Pain's coming to Cleveland in October, and that is the concert that I want to be at. So you know how I'm going to get tickets when the time does come to buy them? You know exactly where I'm going. I am going to Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off that first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's show is also brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. And at Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things that we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, they'll equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most out of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. The Cavs are banking on Darius Garland to go out and have a big year and be healthy in the postseason, because they believe that Garland is the guy that was an all-star last year, not the guy that played in the second half of the season through a lot of injuries, and then, of course, was not the same in the playoffs. So Ramon asks, if Darius Garland were to take a leap in skill and shooting, that could be enough to make us surefire contenders next season, or is Evan the only one that can take us there? I feel like DG is ignored in the future of this squad. Well, I do, Ramon. I do agree that maybe we don't talk about Darius Garland and how good he is enough, because, and it's nothing because of what Darius has done wrong. I think it's because of how good Evan has been and how, like, I have always, and if you are a very long time listener of the show and a true Locked On Cavs sicko and a true everydayer, you might remember an episode where I came on as a guest when Chris Manning was doing this show, and he and I talked about Darius Garland. And I talked about how I thought he was going to, and this was in maybe March of 2023. I talked about how I thought he was going to, or maybe March of 2022, actually. It was before Donovan Mitchell arrived. I talked about how I thought he was going to be an all-NBA player. And this was during his first all-star season. And I still feel as if that guy is there. And I do think that if the Cavs had not traded for Donovan Mitchell, and of course, there are some things that have happened with Darius that are outside of his control, like the jaw injury and even the foot injury this year. Like, he can't control those injuries, and that is a bummer, but it is part of his story. But I do wonder if the Cavs had not traded for Donovan Mitchell, would Garland have made an all-NBA team? Because a lot of the things that are looked at, and it's not the be-all, end-all. Like, I do think a lot of the voters look at more than just the numbers, because if you only look at the numbers, I don't know that Donovan Mitchell would have been voted first team All-NBA this year. But I do wonder if Donovan Mitchell was traded, let's say, to the New York Knicks instead of the Cleveland Cavaliers back when the Jazz traded him away, would Darius Garland have been an all-NBA player by now? I think that's possible. I certainly do. I still think that an all-NBA caliber player is in there. But the thing that I keep coming back to with this specific question is, I don't think that there is an MVP caliber player in there with Darius. I think there is an MVP caliber player in there with Evan. And that is kind of why I think that we so often talk about, well, for the Cavs to get to where they want to go to, Evan Mobley needs to be the best player on the team. And I do believe that. I think that is true. And I don't think that he's far off. And it doesn't mean that Donovan Mitchell's getting worse. It's just that Evan Mobley is going to be insane. And the other part of this that I think is worth talking about is Darius Garland is a small guard. I think that you can win with small guards. I do. But I don't think that you can win with a small guard as your best or even second best player. But if Darius Garland is your third best player, the way that he is right now, I think that is an ideal situation. It's part of the reason why I look at the Atlanta Hawks, and everybody loves what Atlanta did this summer. And I think they've made some very good moves. I like Nickeil Alexander Walker a lot. Kristaps Porzingis, when he's healthy, is still awesome. I just have doubts how frequent that's going to be. But what they have done is they have built a team that does make up for a lot of Trae Young's deficiencies defensively. But I look at that and say, well, if Trae Young's their best player, I still don't think they're going anywhere. Like, I still don't think that a team that has Trae Young as its best player is one that can beat the Cavs or the Knicks, not the Knicks that they did beat years ago, but the current versions of the Cavs and the Knicks in a best of 7 playoff series. Like, if Jalen Johnson takes a leap, maybe that's possible. If he is their best player, okay, it's a different conversation. And I think some of that is true with Darius too. And that's why we don't necessarily talk about him elevating himself so much more. And we don't talk about him necessarily elevating the Cavs so much more, because for the Cavs to get to where they want to be, I think he has to be their third best player. And it doesn't mean that he can't be great, because he could be, theoretically. If you go look up and down every single roster in basketball, I'm not going to sit here and say he's the third best player on a team in the NBA, because that's just not true. Like, you go look at OKC, and I think that you would probably take both Chet and Jalen Williams over him. But how many other third best players in the NBA are better than Darius Garland right now? I don't think it's a long list. At the end of the year, if that list is like, maybe it's only Oklahoma City, then it becomes, okay, that's where the Cavs want to be. Now, Darius can get better. I think he is still getting better. I am still buying stock in Darius Garland as a basketball player. I still think his best days are ahead of him. But I look at this and say, well, yeah, Darius can elevate them. But if he elevates himself so much and Evan doesn't get better, I just think that doesn't matter as much as, say, Evan elevating him a ton and the Cavs get the same version of Darius Garland they got last year. Like, I think that ultimately this season and this core, it hinges on what Evan Mobley looks like. Another question I had based on this current Cavs team comes from Cavs for MVP on Twitter. Do you think DeAndre Hunter is best used off the bench despite his size and archetype being a better fit for the starting lineup? So I think that it's a very interesting discussion to have this season. Last year, there were times where I thought, you know what, they should probably start DeAndre Hunter. Like, you want to have your 5 best players on the floor to start a game. And he is a better basketball player than Max Strus. But I also understand where the Cavs were coming from last year by not making that change. It's a very difficult thing to make a starting lineup change, especially when said starting lineup has multiple years together, the way that the Cavs starting 5 right now does, and compete for a championship in that season. There are not very many teams in the last 2 decades that have traded for a starter during the season and won the title that year. And I'm not saying that the Cavs factored that into their thoughts in their lineup decisions, because I don't think that was true. And I do think one of my biggest gripes with the way Kenny Atkinson handled things last year is, 1, he played DeAndre Hunter too much at power forward. And 2, he didn't play him enough at small forward with the 4 other starters in Garland, Mobley, Mitchell, and Jared Allen. So I think that does need to change. But then I look at Max Strus, and I do think about how he is as a connector. And that is one of the things that Kenny Atkinson brings up all the time. And he does do a very, very good job of that, where he can be somebody that he moves the basketball. And I think my biggest concern with potentially having Hunter in the starting lineup is Hunter is not necessarily somebody that I look at as a ball mover. I think there are times where he doesn't make the quickest decisions. I think that there are times where he can be a bit of a ball stopper. Now, that said, he is much more of a bucket getter than Max Strus will ever be. He's a very, very good shooter, a better shooter than I think Strus is. And he's just better at in terms of scoring, he's much better than Max Strus. But I do think in terms of passing, Max Strus is better. And when you're trying to connect the front court to the back court, that might be something that the Cavs look at and say, okay, yes, DeAndre Hunter, better at basketball, better scorer, better shooter, better at all these things, better defender. But Max Strus connects it all in a way that does really work for the Cavs. So I don't know what direction they're going to go. I do wonder if DeAndre can be a quicker decision maker and a better ball mover with a little bit more comfort in Cleveland, because I do also think you have to look at it from his point of view, where he is trying to assimilate himself into the Cavaliers, while this is a team that at the time they traded for him was like, what, 45 and 10 or something. I don't remember their exact record, but I mean, it was insane at that point, and trying to win a championship. So it's one thing to try and fit into the team, but it's another thing to try and fit into the starting lineup. So I do wonder if those things can be changed after he gets a full offseason, knowing what his role is going to be. He gets a full training camp, a full preseason, an entire regular season to make sure that all of that stuff is figured out. So I think that while obviously, like, hindsight is 2020, and I think it makes some sense now, I wouldn't be stunned if he is in the starting lineup. Now, there has been a pretty big move, relatively big move, in the NBA as far as free agency goes. We'll talk about that and whether or not the Cavs should have been involved. And is LeBron James going to play for Cleveland? Are the Cavs going to trade for LeBron James? We'll talk about that next right here at Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time that you personally had an urgent need, maybe a plumber or a different service provider, and the first person you called might not have answered. So you left a message, but did you wait, or did you call the very next service provider that you could find? My guess is you probably moved on because you had an urgent need that you needed to be handled. Well, that's why you need Open Phone, because Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. Open Phone will let you manage business calls and texts from a single app, Plus, the shared inbox feature is a game changer where your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so that you never miss a customer. Right now, OpenPhone offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That is openphone.com, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you can, hit that thumbs up button as you watch on YouTube as we continue on here. And LeBron James is still a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. He's been at Summer League games watching his son Bronny play. It has been awkward, I think, to say the least. And Nate asks, are the Cavs going to trade for LeBron? The answer to that, I believe, is pretty firmly no. If LeBron were to get bought out before the season, then I would be surprised if LeBron is not on the Cavs. However, I do not anticipate that happening. Right now, I would be very surprised if LeBron James does not play for the Los Angeles Lakers this season. After this season, I don't know if LeBron is going to still be playing in the NBA. I don't know what that's going to look like. But I would be surprised that if we are 12 months from right now, I would be surprised if on July 17th of 2026, if we are talking about LeBron James as a Los Angeles Laker. If he wants to keep playing after this season, I don't think it's going to be in Los Angeles. Could it be in Cleveland? Maybe. He would, I imagine, have to take the minimum in order to make that work. I think that if things don't work out for the Cavs this year in some ways, like go win the title, anything is on the table, or at least get to the finals. Anything will certainly be on the table. But I think that LeBron James this year is going to play for the Lakers. After that, kind of think all bets are off. I would not be stunned. I would be more surprised if next season, the 2026-2027 season, I would be more surprised if LeBron is playing for the Lakers than if he's playing for the Cavs. I think that's just where everything is at right now. But this season, it's hard for me at this point to see him playing for anybody other than the Lakers. The Cavs are not going to trade for him. It's far too complicated. It's truthfully trading $75 million of salary for LeBron James is not worth it, in my opinion, at this point in his career. At other points, no brainer. Right now, probably not worth it. So I do think if LeBron's going to play for the Cavs, it's because he either gets bought out soon, because it has to happen before the season, or next season we're having a conversation about that. Last one, do you think the Cavs should have offered Bradley Beal a contract? I do not. And Beal, of course, was waived and stretched by the Phoenix Suns this week, and he has agreed to a contract, I believe, with the Los Angeles Clippers, or excuse me, the LA Clippers. So that was not something I thought ever made sense for Cleveland. And the reason why I don't think it made sense for Cleveland is look at what the Cavs have done this offseason. They traded Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. Now, Lonzo Ball does not come without risk. He is somebody that obviously has had a very extensive injury history. But when he is healthy, he is somebody that makes an impact on both sides of the floor. They allowed Ty Jerome to walk away in free agency, where Ty had a great season for the Cavs. He's a terrific offensive player. However, he only offers something on one side of the floor because he is essentially a turnstile defensively. They signed Larry Nance to a minimum, which everybody that I talked to in Vegas with other teams loved that move for the Cavs. The fact the Cavs were able to get Larry on a minimum, I think, is a very big steal for them and something that everybody that's a Cavs fan should be very, very excited about. But what does he do? He provides value on both ends of the floor. Bradley Beal, while he is a very good scorer and is, a very, very good player still, does not provide value on both ends of the floor. He is, and always has been, an offense-only player. And I also do know that obviously he signed a 2-year deal worth $11 million. The Cavs could have offered him 1-year contract, $3.6 million. The veteran minimum. Bradley Beal was not giving up the $14 million that he gave up to leave Phoenix and accept that buyout to sign a minimum contract anywhere. I don't think he's ring chasing. I think that it's a good situation where he can play. I don't know if it was the best situation for him. I think that might have been Milwaukee, but I don't think that the Cavs ever had interest in him. And I don't think that they necessarily should have had interest in him, because I think if you look at the way Cleveland has built this offseason, how they have reimagined their team on the margins, signing Bradley Beal is sort of the opposite of what Kobe Altman and the rest of that front office has done. But thank you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen. And thank you for making it your first listen every single day, all week. It was a blast being at Summer League. I really hope that you guys enjoy the podcast with Spencer, enjoy the podcast myself, just in Vegas, talking about everything I had heard, seen, got to watch with the Cavs, all that stuff. I very much appreciate you guys making this your first listen every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button as we get out of here. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell. And I'll be back next week talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.